Batman Beyond is an animated TV show that's set in the future of the DC universe, and it follows the story of Bruce Wayne retiring from being Batman and Terry McGinnis taking up the mantle and becoming the new Batman Beyond. It's an absolutely fantastic show, and one of its best features is the supervillains. Just like the original Batman, Terry McGinnis has a very impressive rogues gallery. Some who have mastery over technology, and some who have been mutated or altered into having amazing superpowers. And this video is going to go over the 5 most powerful members of Batman Beyond's rogues galleries. Ink. Ink is one of the first supervillains we see in the show. She is a criminal who works as a corporate saboteur. It's never really explained exactly how she got her powers, but it is implied that scientists basically injected her with a series of chemicals that mutated her. Her mutated body is basically a living ink that allows her to shapeshift her body into almost any shape, including deadly weapons. And since her body is so malleable, it makes her immune to most forms of physical attacks. Now, her weakness is pretty easy to come by though, as it is water. Water doesn't mix well with her body and seems to dilute it and make her unable to hold her form. In fact, Batman originally beats her with a hosepipe and then a much more impressive Mr. Freeze ice gun, which Bruce Wayne still kept in the Batcave, mainly out of nostalgia. He does like to hold on to things after all. And amazingly, being kept on ice like this doesn't kill her. She's just kept on ice by the police for a very long time, until she is busted out by a disgruntled employee who has fallen in love with her. It's a long story about a guy who's obviously quite lonely, and he falls in love with a chick who's frozen in a block of ice. It's also a very bizarre story. But being on ice for so long damages her physical structure, and she needs more chemicals to stabilise it. Now this does work for a while, but then it gets worse again, and her body breaks down even further. So much so that eventually she can barely move. And she has to get in contact with her estranged daughter, so her daughter can go get the chemicals she needs in order to survive. Unfortunately for her, her daughter is just as evil and greedy as she is, and she mixes a decoagulant into the chemicals that kills her mother. And she does it purely for her mother's money, because, as I said, she is greedy and heartless. Although it is hinted that Ink is still alive and will come back to get revenge on her betraying offspring. The Terrific Trio. This is basically a reimagining of the Fantastic Four. The 3 of them are scientists testing out a new energy device that they've invented, but it malfunctions and exposes them to radiation that alters their DNA and gives them amazing powers. Like I said, it's basically the Fantastic Four. One of them is mutated into a lava rock monster, just like the Thing if his rocks were volcanic and superheated. One of the others is a Mr. Fantastic type with stretchy powers, though his body is flattened, hence why he's called the 2D Man. And the woman of the group is turned into a sort of ghost/vapor being with ice powers. And for a time they're actually the good guys, as they form a superhero group and use their powers to stop crime. They do this while they're waiting for a cure to return them to normal. But sadly, the accident that gave them their powers is also unraveling their DNA and their minds. So before they have time to develop a cure, the 3 of them are going to turn dangerously psychotic and then die. When the 3 of them learn this, they decide to restart the experiment so it'll blow up like a nuclear bomb, killing them and a lot of others as well. Which does kind of prove that they're turning psychotic. Now of course Batman Beyond has to stop this because he can't let Gotham be destroyed, so unfortunately he ends up killing all 3 of them in different ways. This Batman isn't really that afraid to kill, as he does end up killing quite a lot of his enemies in the grand scheme of things. The Brain Trust. This is an elite group of psychically powered individuals, all of whom appear to be born with their powers and then have just cultivated them over time. One is basically invincible. He is super strong and super tough, almost invulnerable, even able to survive falling from several stories up onto solid concrete and walking away without getting so much as a scratch. Another one is a woman named Bombshell, who can shoot beams that blow up and can melt metal. And the third is a fat man who can levitate, has telekinetic powers, and can alter a person's mind so that they can see and hear what he wants them to see and hear. And the 3 of them are so powerful that Batman Beyond couldn't actually defeat them on his own. The only reason he's able to beat them is because of a young girl with psychic powers. The 3 of them have kidnapped this child in order to bring her into their group and cultivate her psychic powers. And she has several abilities, including sending psychic messages and projecting images. and shooting white beams from her eyes that cause blindness. And without her help, Batman Beyond may not have been able to defeat this group at all. They're just that powerful. With that being said, of course, he does manage to take down both Bombshell and the Fat Man. But the one who is basically invincible, well, that's another story, and without this girl's help, he would not have been able to take her down. In fact, it's very likely that he would have died. So they're a very powerful group, especially this invincible one. The Telekinetic Kid. Now, I don't know if he actually gets a supervillain name at some point. I've always just thought of him as the Telekinetic Kid. His real name is Willie Watt, and he's just an ordinary schoolboy in high school. He was smart, but he was also quite small, and he got bullied quite a lot. And he also got bullied at home by his overbearing father, who continually called him weak. So in response to this constant abuse, he decided to steal a golem. Now, this is a gigantic robot that's used in construction for lifting extremely heavy equipment and materials. You may wonder how he'd get access to this, but basically it belongs to his father, or at least his father's company. So he steals the controls to the golem and goes and tries to murder the kid who is picking on him. Pretty messed up, but if you bully someone enough, they will eventually break, as has been shown by the school shootings that have occurred over the years. Now, Batman Beyond was able to stop him, of course, but the golem was damaged in the process, and Willie Watt's brain was fused with the controls. Now, what this means is that initially he was able to control the golem without using the controlling interface. But after Batman defeats the golem for good and puts Willie Watt away in prison, he actually gets even more power. Whatever happened to him when the control fused with his brain unlocks psychic powers. And he is so powerful that he is able to rip up the school gym while he is still in prison, which is likely miles away. He is also able to fly and do pretty much all the standard telekinetic stuff. Pick people up, throw them, throw really heavy objects, create force fields, the standard stuff. And it is one of the best superpowers there is because, quite frankly, it's so powerful. Though of course he is eventually defeated by Batman Beyond and put back in prison. And sadly they're able to put a special psychic dampening helmet on him that basically takes away all of his powers. But without it, he is one of the most powerful Batman villains that there has ever been. In fact, Willie Watt could potentially be the most powerful Batman villain there is, but there is one other contender. Blight. I kind of feel like Blight deserves the top spot because he is essentially a walking nuclear reactor, which makes him crazy powerful. But he is also a billionaire, and easily has the most money and resources of any Batman Beyond villain, next to Ra's al Ghul, of course. Now, Blight's real name is Derek Powers, and he is the co-owner and CEO of Wayne Powers, which was originally just Bruce Wayne's company, but it got merged with Powers' company as time went on. Now, this means that Derek Powers was already insanely powerful and insanely rich, but he still wanted more, and so he sold black market goods on the side, including a mutagenic virus. And the shipping of said virus was Terry McGinnis's first Batman case, and he was not only able to stop the shipment, but he accidentally exposed Derek Powers to the mutagenic virus. And the only way to treat it was with extreme radiation exposure. And somehow the virus combined with the radiation and mutated Derek Powers into Blight, a radioactive walking nuclear bomb. He is able to blast this energy out as a weapon, and he is so hot that no amount of ice or extreme cold can hurt him. He can basically never get cold again. Even freezing him in solid ice does nothing. All it did was slow him down for a few seconds. In fact, in the comics, it's revealed that he doesn't even need to breathe anymore. And he is so radioactive that just being in the same room as him can kill you. And it can also, of course, give you cancer quite easily, which again could lead to your death. In fact, he is able to melt a telephone just by gently holding it in his hand without even trying. So in order to get around in day-to-day society, he has to have a special flesh coating that keeps the radiation safely contained. Unfortunately, as time goes on, he starts giving off such high levels of radiation that this skin is just melting off. And later in the comics, he actually has a very fancy containment suit for his radiation because he's become so powerful that there is no other way of holding back the deadliness of the energy he gives off. And even wearing this protective suit, he's still able to blast people with radiation. And being able to blast someone with the power of a nuclear reactor, well, that's pretty powerful. And as I said, it's debatable that Willie Watt is actually more powerful than Blight, as he has some very impressive telekinetic abilities. But given Blight's resources, and the fact that he is also a crazy powerful nuclear reactor character, I think that makes him the #1 most powerful villain. But what do you think? Is Blight the most powerful Batman Beyond villain? Or is it Willie Watt? And are there any other members of his rogues gallery that you think should have been on this list? Be sure to let us know in the comments. And I'd just like to quickly say that we've got some new merchandise available in the Needle Mouse Productions store. And I'd also like to thank each and every one of my Patreons. It's thanks to your continued support that I'm able to keep making these videos, and will keep making them in the future. And as always, thanks for watching, and feel free to subscribe, share, like, and comment.